What's happening around the world and what's happening here at home? Good evening, this is Weekend Primetime News and I'm Sandro Ferdinando. Let's take a look at your headlines for tonight.
Strengthening cooperation across many sectors, including the economy, is the primary goal, says the Indian Vice President during his meeting with President Dissanayake. CID begins examination of files related to the coal procurement that were taken into their custody. 3 people, including a mother and daughter, were killed in an arson attack in Maharagama. US representatives are going to Islamabad, Pakistan for negotiations with Iran tomorrow. US President issues a statement on Truth Social.
Starting off with news here at home, Vice President of India Sri C.P. Radhakrishnan, who is in Sri Lanka on a 2-day official visit, met with President Maharagama Dissanayake this morning at the Presidential Secretariat.
Indian Vice President Sri C.P. Radhakrishnan arrived in Sri Lanka this morning, commencing a 2-day official visit. The Indian Vice President and his delegation, who landed at the Bandaranaike International Airport in Katunayake, were received by Minister of Sports and Youth Affairs Sunil Maharagama. Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka Santosh Jha, along with officials from the Ministry of External Affairs, were also present to welcome the delegation. Vice President Radhakrishnan then arrived at the Presidential Secretariat, where he was warmly received by President Maharagama Dissanayake. President Dissanayake extended congratulations to him on his recent assumption of office as the Vice President of India. This marks the first official visit to Sri Lanka by the Indian Vice President. The discussions focused on further strengthening the long-standing friendship and cooperation between India and Sri Lanka, with particular attention given to enhancing collaboration in the fields of economic development, education, healthcare, tourism, investment and trade. Indian Vice President C.P. Radhakrishnan, who is currently on an official visit to Sri Lanka, met with Prime Minister Dr. Harinyamarasuriya. Radhakrishnan shared highlights of the exchange via his official account on X, saying that both leaders shared the civilizational heritage of the two countries and discussed the importance of further strengthening bilateral ties, including people-to-people bonds.
Indian Vice President Sri C.P. Radhakrishnan has announced that a decision has been made to extend the Overseas Citizen of India card eligibility up to the 6th generation for the Indian origin Tamil community living in Sri Lanka. He made these remarks while addressing a gathering of the Indian diaspora during his visit to Sri Lanka.
OCI திட்டத்திற்கு தகுதி பெறுவதில் பல்வேறு விதமான இன்னல்கள் இருப்பதை எடுத்துக்காட்டி அதை தீர்த்து வைக்கும்படியும் கேட்டுக்கொண்டார்கள்.
Last year, during the visit of the Prime Minister of India to Sri Lanka, the Indian origin Tamil community shared with him the problems in obtaining the OCI card. They pointed out various difficulties in qualifying for the OCI scheme due to the lack of required documents and requested to resolve it. In relation to this, I am happy to announce 2 important matters. First, a decision has been taken to extend the OCI scheme to the 6th generation for the Indian origin Tamil community in Sri Lanka. I see this as a historic achievement. This serves as a solution to our hardships. The second announcement is that the application procedure for the OCI card has been made very easy. Certificates issued by the Sri Lankan government will henceforth be accepted as proof of Indian origin. This scheme has been greatly simplified to be helpful to the plantation workers who came to Sri Lanka without Indian documents. This stands as a historic milestone.
இந்த திட்டம் மிக மிக எளிமையாக்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறது. இது ஒரு வரலாற்று மைல்கல்லாக அமைந்திருக்கிறது.
Indian Vice President Sri C.P. Radhakrishnan said that the Indian government has taken steps to extend the eligibility for overseas citizenship of India up to the sixth generation of Indian origin Tamil community living in Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, a special meeting was held today in Colombo between leaders of Sri Lankan Tamil political parties and the Indian Vice President. Representing the Tamil Progressive Alliance, its leader Manu Ganesan, Palani Digambaram and Bharat Arulsamy participated in these discussions. Representing the Ceylon Workers' Congress, its leader Sendil Thondaman and Marudupandi Rameshwaram were in attendance.
Speaking at a special media briefing by the Indian Ministry of External Affairs, Foreign Secretary of India Vikram Misri spoke about the matters discussed during the meeting between the Indian Vice President and the Sri Lankan President.
Both sides focused on the different projects that comprise this package as Sri Lanka begins work on relief and rehabilitation initiatives post-cyclone Ditwa. The Vice President mentioned, as I said, some initiatives that are underway from the Indian side and some proposals that have already been discussed between the two countries. Notable amongst them, the project related to the energy hub in Trincomalee and the proposal to link India and Sri Lanka through an oil pipeline. Vice President also took the opportunity to express his appreciation to President Dissanayake and the Sri Lankan government for the recent release of several Indian fishermen who were in Sri Lankan custody. I believe a total of 47 fishermen have been released in recent weeks, some of them very, very recently, and who are expected to be repatriated to India in the next day or two. The Vice President also referred to the need to remain in constant communication and contact on this issue. President Dissanayake also mentioned on this subject that there was a need for India and Sri Lanka to work together to address the fishermen-related issue, something that the Vice President welcomed and once again underlined the need for more frequent contact between the concerned authorities of the two countries on this issue, for the joint working group on this subject to meet, as well as for engagement between the fishermen's associations on the two sides.
Responding to a question raised by journalists about regional security, the Indian Foreign Secretary spoke about the progress made in establishing the Colombo Security Conclave. This
common area that we live in and the ocean around us is beset with these challenges. So one of the innovative constructs that India and Sri Lanka have been engaging on for the last several years, and on this actually cooperation is already well underway and it's happening at various levels, but it is sought to be formalized under the rubric of the Colombo Security Conclave. Now this is something for which there is an interim secretariat that is already running in Colombo. Colombo happens to be the headquarters of the Colombo Security Conclave, and there has been steady progress that has been made in recent years in meetings between the national security advisors and their deputies of the various countries to develop the agenda, take it forward, and give this dialogue forum the status of an international organization. And so the agreements related to that have all been concluded. We are now waiting for the final conclusion of the headquarters agreement. The first Secretary General of the Colombo Security Conclave by consensus will be an Indian national, and we are waiting for the approvals, etc., for him to come through to take up that assignment. I believe there are some procedural requirements related to this in Sri Lanka that are to be carried out, and this subject of the importance of the Colombo Security Conclave in meeting these kinds of security challenges and the need to complete the final procedural requirements so that the organization can start functioning in right earnest was discussed between the two leaders, and we hope that those requirements can be fulfilled very, very quickly, because it would be in the to the mutual benefit of all of the countries that are part of the Colombo Security Conclave and are concentrated around the littorals of the Indian Ocean. With regard to Sri Lanka's position in the conflict in West Asia, really this is a question that the Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka is better qualified to answer. We have, of course, observed it and noted it very carefully. I also recall that Foreign Minister Vichita Herath was in Delhi just a few days after the conflict broke out, and he took part in several discussions there where this question came up, and he very clearly enunciated and articulated Sri Lanka's stand, which, if I recall correctly, based itself on respect for international law and how all actions that Sri Lanka had taken followed international law. So, I mean, that is Sri Lanka's position. I really would not have any comment on that. Insofar as India's own position is concerned and how we are dealing with it, obviously the impact of this conflict is being felt by us in various spheres, in the energy availability sphere, obviously, as many other countries are feeling. We also have a very large Indian expatriate community, nearly 10 million people who live in the Gulf. And then obviously we are concerned by the fallout of this conflict for regional security in general, and for the Gulf countries and Iran in particular. We have said from the outset that, first of all, the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries must be respected, and that if there are any issues, they ought to be resolved through dialogue and diplomacy. We have asked for de-escalation to be prioritized, for the safety of civilians to be prioritized, for civilian targets, for civilian areas and establishments not to be targeted. Most important,
US President Donald Trump states that American representatives will head to the Pakistani capital, Islamabad, tomorrow for talks with Iran. President Trump shared this in a social media post this evening, and foreign media reports that the necessary preparations for these discussions are currently underway in Islamabad, Pakistan.
US President Donald Trump did not specify which officials of the United States would travel to Islamabad, Pakistan for the second round of talks with Iran tomorrow. Posting on Truth Social, Trump said, quote-unquote, "We're offering a very fair and reasonable deal, and I hope they take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran." This move to send a delegation to Pakistan tomorrow comes after the previous ceasefire negotiations, led by Vice President J.D. Vance on the 11th of April, concluded without reaching an agreement. Previously, the Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister said that Tehran is not prepared to resume direct talks with American officials. He argued that Washington is adhering to extremist conditions that are stalling progress. It is amidst this situation that Iran decided to retake control of the Strait of Hormuz, even while a ceasefire was in effect. In this context, the shooting by Iranian security forces at two Indian vessels passing through Hormuz has drawn significant global attention. What is the latest situation in the Strait of Hormuz? This is how the data for maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz was recorded this afternoon. By this afternoon, maritime traffic through the strait had come to a standstill. On Saturday, Iran once again closed the Strait of Hormuz for all ships. This comes after Iran had declared on Friday that the sea route was open. Why did Iran fire at two ships yesterday? What really happened? Following Iran's decision last afternoon, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps fired warning shots at two commercial vessels passing through Hormuz.
Great India watch and start from that important. And there is no any permission for you to use from this place. You are ordered to go back to your departure immediately. You are ordered to go back to your departure immediately. You get my message?
Okay, copied your message. I will turn back and there is no permission to transit Hormuz. That's correct, sir?
Yes, sir. There is no permission for you.
The vessels under fire have been identified as Sanmar Herald and Jug Arnav, which were carrying Iraqi crude oil. At the time of the incident, 7 Indian-flagged vessels were traveling in the area. These ships are currently stranded in the Persian Gulf region. How did India respond after the attack on its ships? The Indian government responded very firmly and promptly to the attack on its commercial vessels. The Ministry of External Affairs of India summoned the Iranian ambassador to India, Dr. Mohammad Fathali, last evening to seek clarification. The Indian Foreign Secretary expressed strong concern and lodged an official protest. India questioned the shooting, pointing out that Iran had previously described India as a friendly country and promised safe passage. India has demanded that its energy security not be used as a shield amid the US-Iran crisis and called for the immediate safe passage of the vessels. What was Iran's response? The Iranian ambassador stated that they were forced to close the strait again because the United States had violated the ceasefire agreement. Will Pakistan mediate peace talks amidst the Iran-India tension? Al Jazeera, quoting Pakistani security sources, reports that US-Iran peace talks are expected to take place next week. The news service also reported on heightened security in parts of Pakistan, publishing relevant photographs. 2 American C-17 Globemaster aircraft have reportedly landed at the Nur Khan Air Base in Rawalpindi, near the Pakistani capital Islamabad. Roads leading from the airbase to key zones in Islamabad have been closed and security has been tightened. Furthermore, Pakistani sources indicate that the Serena Hotel and Marriott Hotel in Islamabad, where the first round of US-Iran talks previously took place, will not be open for bookings until next Friday. What is the current impact on global oil prices? The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has severely impacted economies of countries worldwide. India, which imports heavily from the Gulf, faces a real concern as the price of urea has increased sharply. India had invoked the Essential Commodities Act since the 9th of March to ration gas distribution. Foreign media reported that with the LPG cylinder price increasing by 60 Indian rupees, many Indians are extending cylinder life by simply not cooking. The departure of Western high-income expatriate workers from the Gulf following Iranian strikes on critical infrastructure has reduced demand for labor in construction, hospitality and retail sectors. This has threatened the livelihoods of around 9 million Indian workers in the region. Although Pakistan's local urea manufacturing insulates it partially from the disruption, it remains import dependent on phosphate-based fertilizers such as diammonium phosphate, where sales have already fallen 23% during the period from October to April this year. From October 2025 to April 2026. The Pakistani government's inability to subsidize fuel prices due to IMF pressure has resulted in rising costs being placed on the consumers. Public life has been hampered by smart lockdowns in Pakistan and frequent power outages as the government cuts electricity supply to reduce dependence on costly imported fuel. The war in the Middle East has also threatened the livelihoods of around 5 million Pakistani workers in the region. Bangladesh, which imports roughly 95% of its fuel, is facing a deepening energy crisis. Long queues have formed outside petrol stations, universities across the country have been shut, and the government has cut working hours to conserve energy. The state of national energy emergency in the Philippines that was declared on the 24th of March is still in effect. Fuel rationing has been introduced in the country's major cities, and citizens are being urged to reduce fuel consumption. The government has also implemented measures to control fuel prices and ensure equitable distribution of available supplies. Japan may face a power supply crunch if the Middle East crisis drags on and liquefied natural gas shipments remain disrupted, just as air conditioning demand rises during the Japanese summer. The country takes delivery of some 4 million metric tons of LNG annually, or 6% of its total LNG imports via the Strait of Hormuz, which has been effectively closed due to the Iran war. In response to surging global oil prices driven by the conflict, Japan on Wednesday announced a $10 billion financial support package for Asian nations, including Sri Lanka, to help them secure crude oil supplies. Will there be a food shortage? Warnings of a food crisis in African countries. International organizations have warned that the surge in fertilizer prices has severely impacted agriculture in African countries, which could lead to a global food shortage in the coming months. They point out that the reduction in food production and rising prices pose a serious global threat. International organizations emphasize that this fertilizer shock will be extremely difficult for small-scale farmers and subsidized agricultural systems to endure. To mitigate this, the Global Fertilizer Crisis Response Group is taking the lead, working closely with the Food and Agriculture Organization, the World Bank, and the African Development Bank.
Moving back to news here at home, the Criminal Investigation Department states that all files related to the investigation into the procurement of coal have been taken into their custody. The department further said that statements have been recorded from all officials who had custody of the relevant documents.
The Criminal Investigation Department has begun evaluating the documents regarding the procurement of coal that were taken into their custody. The Criminal Investigation Department said that the examination of electronic data regarding the procurement of coal is also currently underway. The head office of the Lanka Coal Company located in Kohuala was sealed on the 11th of April. This followed a complaint recently filed with the Criminal Investigation Department by the Secretary to the President Dr. Nandika Sanat Kumar Naika requesting an investigation into coal imports since 2009. 4 police officers and 2 officers from the Criminal Investigation Department have been assigned to provide 24-hour security at the head office of the Lanka Coal Company. What is this coal issue? Since the day the Putlam Narochole Lakwiche power plant was commissioned, the coal tender, the largest tender in this country, commenced. From the very beginning of these coal imports, there were allegations of fraud, corruption and irregularities. Yesterday, we told you about the tender monopoly of Noble Resources. Meanwhile, allegations were also raised regarding the quality of the coal. Should the subject minister be held responsible for importing substandard coal? When allegations regarding the quality of coal surfaced, this was the response of the then minister, Partali Champika Ranavaka.
Some people think all these things happen with the knowledge of the ministers. To be honest, we didn't even know such a problem had emerged until it got stuck at the final moment. Because coal comes and goes, ships arrive, ministers don't sit around watching all that. Relevant officials have been appointed for that, and those officials are responsible. That is it. What we do is simply monitor whether things are happening within the legal policy framework we have been given.
However, on another occasion, former Energy Minister Partali Champika Ranavaka spoke about how coal was purchased without a fair bidding process.
Since 2012, for 2 years now, coal has been supplied to Sri Lanka without any formal tender. This must be investigated immediately. Also, who is behind this racket? What kind of power do they possess? I believe this investigation should look into that as well.
Nobel Resources Limited.
Was the same company allowed to continuously import coal for the benefit of the country or for the benefit of someone else? Here is a disclosure made by another former energy minister, Ranjit Siambalapitia.
Up until 2015, 5 tenders were implemented, and every time the coal supply was ultimately awarded to a company called Noble Resources, even if that company was not directly selected in any tender by a tender board decision. It is notable that they became the sole continuous supplier to the power plant based on the appeals board decision or cabinet decisions. In 2011, because 2 coal shipments brought during rough seas could not be unloaded, that stock was later given to Thorian Iron and Steel on a buyback basis, causing a loss of nearly 400 million rupees to the Ceylon Electricity Board. Furthermore, due to Noble Resources failing to supply coal as scheduled, the power plant could not operate from the 28th of September to the 23rd of October 2011, resulting in an estimated loss of 3,500 million rupees. It is also alleged that the failure to supply 300,000 metric tons of coal, as agreed in the 2014-15 contract, caused a loss of 12,500 million rupees.
Now it's clear. 2 names are mentioned here, Noble Resources and Thorian Iron and Steel. How was it possible to make the largest purchases in Sri Lanka without a tender? There must have been massive influence, right? Who exerted that influence? Who benefited from it? Later, former Minister Patali Champika himself revealed who was behind Noble Resources. This was the disclosure Patali made while facing various allegations from those who were once in his own political camp.
Thorian is the company through which Mahinda Rajapaksa's youngest son sent a satellite into space. It is an open secret who was behind Noble Resources for these coal imports. Nominally and officially, there was a certain company and a few individuals. In addition to them, there was another person. Furthermore, a powerful daughter of a certain family was behind this process. Moreover, the funding required for certain media outlets that sling mud at us today was generated through this coal business. Specifically, we should investigate whether this tender process was implemented to provide funds to Rivera Media Institution and the CSN Media Institution.
Tender party ක්‍රියාත්මක වුණාද නැද්ද කියන එක පිළිබඳව ඒක හරහා සොයා බලමු.
It's clear now, isn't it? The true colors of certain forces that squandered billions of public money in these transactions are even blacker than the coal itself. Therefore, while an investigation is conducted into why the quality of coal decreased after steps were taken to purchase it via tender, we must also investigate the massive robbery of public funds that was buried in the past under the guise of parliamentary debates. Then the forces behind these deals, who today wear various masks and act innocent on the national stage, will be exposed. But it shouldn't just end with a report. Who are the culprits? Whether the crime was committed today, yesterday or back then is irrelevant. They must be punished. That is what the people expect.
Move forward, Sri Lanka.
From Gammanta, 3 projects that will change the lives of thousands of ordinary Sri Lankans nears completion. Precious, safe drinking water for 3 schools in rural areas. Digamandala Primary School at Panama in Ampara. Almagre Mount College at Kandapala in Norelia. Diggalpura Primary School at Madrigiriya in Polonnaruwa. Dedicated towards building a prosperous future for our children. Gammanta, for the people, by the people.
Welcome back. Continuing with more local news, the governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, met with the governor of the People's Bank of China, Dr. Pan Gongshan.
The meeting between CBSL Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe and Governor of the People's Bank of China Dr. Pan Gongchen was held on the sidelines of the International Monetary Fund World Bank Spring Meetings 2026. According to a statement issued by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the governors discussed about escalated geopolitical tensions and Governor Veerasinghe briefed Governor Gongchen on recent economic developments on Sri Lanka, including emerging challenges stemming from heightened tensions in the Middle East. The statement adds that while appreciating the continued engagement between the two central banks, the discussions also underscored the potential benefits of promoting renminbi-denominated settlements for trade between China and Sri Lanka.
3 people, including a mother and a daughter from the same family, died in a fire that broke out last afternoon on the upper floor of a 2-story house along Pamunur Road in Maharagama. Police stated that the father, who sustained critical burn injuries in the fire, is currently receiving treatment in the intensive care unit of the Kalubowila Teaching Hospital.
The fire broke out last afternoon on the upper floor of a 2-story house at United Welfare Mavata, Pamunur Road, Maharagama. A mother, her school-aged daughter and the homeowner died as a result of the fire. Local residents worked together to rush the critically injured father to the hospital. Police stated that investigations have revealed the fire was set by the homeowner himself. The family had been residing on the upper floor of the 2-story house on a rental basis. The 55-year-old mother and the 16-year-old daughter died at the scene. The homeowner, who had sustained severe burn injuries after setting the fire, died this afternoon while receiving treatment at the Kalubowila Teaching Hospital.
Protect our cricket.
Sri Lanka cricket authorities have failed to provide accurate information to auditors regarding the expenses incurred by the national team during the 2022 World Cup in Australia. This was revealed by the Auditor General during proceedings before the COPE committee.
Accommodation for President Australia.
Yeah.
219,000.
Yeah.
Accommodation President Australia 52,000.
Yeah.
Shammi Silva travel to Australia 2.4 million.
Yeah.
Ravin to Australia day change 81,700.
Yeah.
Right? Ravin Australia 1.1 million. Shammi Silva travel Australia Brisbane to Adelaide 210,000. Shammi Silva transport 64,020. Shammi Silva transport 94,350. Shammi Silva accommodation Novotel Super Paradise, that may be an hotel, to 350,364. Shammi Silva travel Australia Adelaide to Sydney, it may be an internal flight, 671,000. Jayant Dharmadas Australia 2.2 million. So such amount, the total was 8.6 million. All are related to particular ex officio members as well as certain other travel expenses related to those travelings.
If the relevant invoices for these transactions recorded cannot be submitted, or if there is no supporting documentation such as letters, correspondence or other evidence, then only a schedule is provided. In such a situation, serious concerns arise, particularly as to why such a significant amount has been reversed. Furthermore, Honourable Chairman, these amounts reportedly include payments made to cricket officials, hotel expenses and other internal costs. With transactions of this nature, it raises a critical question: why is it not possible to properly verify and confirm their relevance when recording this liability?
අපිට අදාළ නැති බව ඇයි අපිට ට්‍රේස් කරගන්න බැරි මේ liability එක record කරන වෙලාවේ?
The Auditor General's statement has confirmed that Sri Lanka cricket authorities failed to provide accurate information during the audit process. Under Sri Lankan law, such compliance is not optional. Every registered sports association is subject to audit by the Auditor General in terms of Section 21A 3 of the Sports Act number 25 of 1973 as amended by Act number 47 of 1993. In addition, financial statements certified by the Executive Committee in accordance with Part 3, Section 7, Subsection 13 of the Sports Regulations, published in Extraordinary Gazette number 1990/23, dated the 27th of October 2016, must be submitted to the Auditor General. As a national sports association registered under the Sports Act, Sri Lanka Cricket is therefore legally bound to submit its financial statements and is subject to audit under Article 154(3) of the Constitution of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka. Despite these clear legal obligations, the failure to provide accurate and verifiable information raises serious concerns about transparency and accountability within the administration of the sport. This situation prompts broader questions. Why do authorities repeatedly fall short of legal and governance standards? And what does this mean for the future of cricket in Sri Lanka? For your attention.
News First with the people.
Before we wrap up, in some news just in from the developing situation from the Middle East, the White House has announced that U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, Special Representative Steve Witkoff and Presidential Advisor Jared Kushner will participate in the peace talks in Pakistan. Meanwhile, Iran says it has not yet decided whether to send a delegation to Islamabad. With that, we wrap up news for tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. You take care and good night.